Hello, my name is Naomi Burgess. I'm a member of the Immersive Realities Research Group at the Lucerne University of Applied Sciences and Arts, specifically within the School of Information Technology. And today I'm here to present to you To Be or Not to Be, the processes behind developing and testing a first prototype of a VR beekeeping serious game called VR Bees, for eventual usage in a course taught by Bienenschweiz, which is the beekeeper association of the German-speaking part of Switzerland. So while beekeeping is something that's on the rise in Switzerland and is an activity that's proven to be fairly economically significant within the country, the honeybee, which is quite possibly one of the most vital organisms on the planet, is both quite fragile and at risk at the moment, not only from agricultural practices and climate change, not only from threats being posed by varroa mites or improper handling of an infestation of said mites, but also from unknowing over disruption of colonies, right? And all of this makes beekeeping a highly complex activity, meaning that beekeepers must be extremely well trained from the start to know how to handle and recognize all of these different situations that they might run into. But training beekeepers is really hard. And this is because of a number of reasons, some of the more major ones being first, the risk that comes with the sensitive nature of honeybees, which again can suffer or die from either too many hive interventions or just a few clumsy or poorly executed interventions. Second, there's the fact that bee colonies and their behavior don't always follow textbook patterns. And then finally, there's the inherently seasonal nature of beekeeping, that certain tasks or preparation or practical training for certain tasks can only take place at specific times during the year, and even and in addition to that, sometimes can only take place during given specific types of weather. And indeed, all these factors makes it very difficult to first of all, provide hands-on training with actual beehives, which then therefore means it's hard to provide beekeepers in training with firsthand experience of the wide variety of scenarios and situations they'll have to watch out for. And then finally, it's hard to help trainees prepare for crucial, oftentimes seasonal tasks ahead of time, as well as view potential consequences of their actions that might not manifest until much later down the line, right? And so what can we do about these gaps, to ameliorate these gaps in beekeeper training and beekeeper education? Well, this is where the utilization of VR comes into play. Through creation of a VR series beekeeping game for use in courses like those taught via Bienenschweiz. Not only can trainees benefit from learning through play, as well as periods of repetitious and intentional physical activity and self-guided experimentation, but they can also first work through a number of different scenarios revolving around first gauging bees' behaviors and then reacting appropriately. Scenarios of this nature can center on topics ranging from effects of diseases and how to identify them, to recognizing longer-term impacts of disturbing or damaging a hive via various kinds of faulty interventions. And ideally, these scenarios would also incorporate multiple levels of difficulty for different levels of beekeeping experience, as well as different kinds of play. So, say, competitive setups versus something maybe that's a bit more explorative, right? And also, speaking of viewing longer-term effects without needing to wait for them to take hold in real life, training in VR can also allow teaching to occur regularly and year-round, regardless of temperature or weather. And then above all else, all of this happens without any harm ever coming to a hive and its resident bees. So with all this in mind, we constructed a first VR prototype to evaluate what our final application should entail. We set up a simple scenario, so a single hive box containing 7 frames in total, sitting atop a wooden table in the middle of a field, in a clearing in the middle of a field. Players can inspect the box and its environment, as well as pull out the virtual hive's frames holding the combs inside. Each comb has bees that are sort of bustling about on it, with one comb containing a queen bee. Additionally, bees fly back and forth between various areas in the grass surrounding the immediate perimeter. And surrounding you is also, of course, the ever-present sound of buzzing bees. We developed this prototype in Unity, and we chose the Valve Index as our VR headset for its high image quality and resolution, since we'd be employing a fairly detail-oriented observation-centric task in our user studies, which we'll be talking a little bit about next. So we then used this prototype to carry out an exploratory user study with 12 participants of varying experience levels. Each beekeeper was tasked with finding the queen bee, which is a common task for beekeepers. Before play sessions, we asked the current participant general questions about their beekeeping background. Afterwards, or after the play session, we then prompted them to reflect on the game they had just experienced. Each two-part interview lasted about 40 minutes in total, in addition to the 10 minutes in VR each participant spent. We then conducted a qualitative study analysis, which focused on how beekeepers of different levels could benefit the most from a VR game and how it could support their training. As a result, we identified several game design elements and features to especially focus on as we continue development. First, inclusion of free exploration scenarios, so allowing for long-term observation of choices and their impacts. Second, we want to support more preset or situational scenarios that require specific decisions, which then offer feedback concerning the actions that trainees just took. Third, the ability to select between different scenarios and practice in a more targeted manner, so thereby individualizing the beekeeping learning process. And finally, we want to look at including haptic training sequences that instigate time pressure as a central dynamic, so thereby encouraging application of intentional physical motions and activity, and facilitating user presence, as well as encouraging hive interventions that are short and to the point. Overall, with these results, we can shape the next version of VRBs to match beekeepers' requirements and close gaps in existing training programs. Going forward, we have a variety of tasks to tackle. First of all, rendering an active beehive is computationally demanding, especially in VR. And accurately simulating bee behavior is going to be very challenging. On the game design side, we will need to develop more playful methods of hive interaction to cover aforementioned learning scenarios. And lastly, we'll be working with incorporating physical beekeeping equipment into our game's overall setup to increase both realism and sense of presence, as we previously mentioned when discussing the usage of haptics. And on that note, thank you so much for watching. And thank you to Bienenschweiz for their ongoing support, as well as to all of our funders. We couldn't have done this without you. Thanks, and enjoy the rest of GSGS.